Yo, what is good, Jets Nation? Welcome back to Jets Media, and welcome to the next episode of the brand new series I have here on Jets Media, where we're breaking down each position group. As you guys can tell, I got my buddy Jack with me.
What up, what up?
And we'll be breaking down the defensive line. Now, this is probably one of the deepest positions on this entire roster, and one of those positions where every single player that's going to be making the 53-man roster will be making an impact, because we all know that Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich loves that 10-man deep rotation where everybody's going to be on the field. We heard Robert Saleh spoke to the media yesterday talking about the defensive line rotation. So we're going to be breaking down that. We're going to be breaking down each individual player, some expectations we have for the defensive line, and I'm really excited. So before we hop into the video, I just want to mention, if you guys are new to Jets Media, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you guys want to check me out over on Instagram and Twitter, that is at NYJets_media. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please do not forget to thumbs it up. With that being said, let's dive right in. So first, we're going to talk about the defensive tackle position, and then we're going to go into the edge later on. So Jack, here's the list of all the defensive tackles that we have heading into training camp. I listed John Franklin Myers as defensive tackle, but don't forget, John Franklin Myers can also be a D tackle and also line up on the edge. So what's your thoughts of just looking at the defensive tackles on paper?
Yeah, man. I mean, we got a bunch of hitters in this defensive tackle room for sure. I mean, on the entire defensive front edge as well. But very excited about these defensive tackles. Obviously, Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Myers was extended last season. Then you got guys like Sheldon Rankin, Solomon Thomas, Jonathan Marshall, who I actually am very hopeful for will make an impact in his second year as a rotational piece, obviously. But I look at all these names. I like the depth. I like the starters, obviously. And I'm confident that these guys are, going to have a much better season than they did last year.
Yeah, last year, the two players that led the team in sacks were both, interior defensive linemen. Well, not really John Franklin Myers, because he was lined up as an edge mostly than inside. John Franklin Myers had 6 sacks. Quinnen Williams had 6 sacks. So I'm expecting big things from those two players. But when it comes to people behind them, I really love the signing of Solomon Thomas. If you guys watch my channel a lot and you see me on Twitter, Solomon Thomas was one of those players that I was really hoping that the Jets would sign for a multitude of reasons. Experience with Robert Saleh, knows the system, and will replace Foley Fatukasi in that rotational role. So I feel like Solomon Thomas is a low-key sleeper on the interior defensive line. Now transitioning over to the edge rushers. This is the edge rushers on paper. You can throw in JFM on this side as well, because like I said, he does both. He's very versatile. So my first impressions is, yes, we got Carl Lawson coming back from injury. He's probably going to be the most important player on this defensive line if he's all healthy, because if you guys remember last year, he was lighting it up in training camp. He was the guy that was creating all the buzz. So let's hope that Carl Lawson stays healthy. And then obviously we have the first-round rookie, Jermaine Johnson, entering his first season with the New York Jets. A lot of high expectations for him. And then underneath him, we got Vinny Curry, who did not play a snap last year. Those two players in Vinny Curry and Carl Lawson, those are two big-time free agent acquisitions last year that was supposed to be part of the rotation that did not step on the field once last year. So those are two, you can say, offseason acquisitions in 2022. You add them to the mix with Bryce Huff and the new rookie in Michael Clemens, and then guy in Jabari Zuniga and Jacob Martin, who's another guy who was a free agent acquisition. So Jack, what's your thoughts of the edge rushers on paper heading into training camp?
Yeah, again, man, similar to the D tackles, very, very excited about what this group of edge rushers can potentially bring to the table this year. Obviously, we know it's the most crucial role of the Robert Saleh defense is the pass rush. So if Carl Lawson can be the player that we expected him to be when he signed him last year, if Jermaine Johnson can make an impact in his rookie season, if these rotational players like Vinny Curry, Bryce Huff, let's see what Michael Clemens has got in the tank. I'm very excited to see what these guys are going to do. And it really is where this defensive scheme starts and where it's run through. So if these guys are doing their job and playing as good as we expect them to, I think we're going to be all right for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the edge rushers is going to be probably the most important piece of this entire defense, because without pass rush, the whole defensive scheme of Robert Saleh does not thrive. So let's hope that we can get to the quarterback on a consistent basis, because last year, the defensive line did not live up to the expectations. I think a lot of that had to do with injuries as well as personnel. So let's get into a big topic that a lot of Jets fans are, learning about the system. We saw it last year for the first time with Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich, but they run a really deep defensive line rotation. Robert Saleh spoke to the media a couple days ago before OTAs, and he had something really interesting to say when he used Quinnen Williams as an example. So here's a little clip of Robert Saleh speaking to the media about the defensive line rotation.
As there's 60 to 65 snaps on average for a defensive team. There's in that range, and if you hit 70%, you're around 40 to 45 snaps. So if we use a guy like Quinnen, for example, in a perfect scenario, and we're winning football games, those 40 to 45 snaps, 30 to 35 of them are against the pass. So you're trying to time it. So to try to give you an overall picture, a view of it, let's just say we start the game, and I'll use Quinn as an example. Well, he rolls out first down, rolls out second down, third down, they convert. We'll get Quinnen off the field. He's not on the field for first down. He's not on the field for second down. Third down comes in, he's back on the field, we're off the field, and we get off. So in that scenario, he played 4 out of 6 snaps. It's about 67%. So you're just trying to pace it for these guys so that they're fresh as possible when crunch time hits.
So Jack, what's your thoughts of what Robert Saleh had to say, using Quinnen as an example, the 70% rule? So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, man, I think it's, extremely insightful from Coach Saleh. I love the way he put that. Once again, it just instills confidence in me that Robert Saleh, really does have the potential to turn this thing around here in New York. It's a beautiful example that he said, and that's, exactly how it should be. You have Quinnen out there in those crucial situations. If they convert on a third down, get Quinnen off the field for first and second down, bring him back out there for third down, you guys get off the field. And then all of a sudden Quinnen is out there for 4 of 6 snaps on a drive. So that's exactly how it should be done. And I'm, very excited to see, all these players, not just, guys like Quinnen or Carl Lawson or, JFM. But I'm excited to see all these rotational players in there doing their part, because everybody that we're going to talk about today will most likely get their number called at some point. Obviously, we're going to lose a couple of these guys to, training camp cuts. Not all these guys are going to make the 53, but, the guys that do, we're going to be seeing lots of all of them. So I'm very excited.
And I honestly agree with the philosophy of Saleh and Ulbrich with his defensive line rotation, because you want to make sure that these guys are fresh and they're ready to go for their crucial moments on third down, especially with 2 minutes left in the game. Like, instead of giving Quinnen Williams and John Franklin Myers pretty much every single snap in the first half and even the third quarter, and then all of a sudden late in the fourth quarter they've been playing all game and they're kind of not have all the energy. So what this does is it creates these players to be able to maintain their energy for the entire game, and that's also why the New York Jets are really trying to add talent to this defensive line no matter what, and have these crazy depth. That's the draft pick of Michael Clemens, the draft pick of Jermaine Johnson, signing Jacob Martin, even bringing back Vinny Curry, getting Solomon Thomas, drafting Jonathan Marshall last year. They just continuously adding people to this defensive line, because even though there's 10 guys on the roster for that defensive line position, that 10th guy is going to be on the field for a majority piece of the game. So I'm really excited. I feel like this defensive line rotation is going to work. If you look at what happened with San Francisco when Saleh was over there, it worked tremendously. So it's just a matter of them staying healthy, getting into a rhythm, and making sure that those guys are fresh and ready to go late in those games where those pass rushing downs late in the fourth quarter, and hopefully the defensive line can live up to their potential. So Jack, who is your sleeper of the defensive line this year? Obviously, there's a lot of guys that you can choose from. Who's that guy that not a lot of people are talking about that you feel like could have a big time season this year?
Yeah, I don't know how big time of a season numbers wise he's going to have, but like I said, he's a rotational player that I think is definitely going to make an impact when his number is called in his second year, and that's Jonathan Marshall. And the reason that I'm specifically picking Jonathan Marshall, we all know that we lost Foley Fatukasi this offseason. He was our run stuffer. He was our guy to plug those gaps up the middle and stop the run. I think Jonathan Marshall, not as good as Foley yet, but potentially in the future. But I definitely think that Jonathan Marshall can step into that rotational run stuffing role and hopefully be very productive in year 2.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Marshall showed a lot of flash and promise at the end of last year when his name was called. I feel like he has every tool you want in a young player to develop into the system, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in year number 2. My sleeper for this defensive line this year is definitely going to be Bryce Huff. I feel like a lot of people are forgetting about Bryce Huff. The one problem about Bryce Huff in his career, honestly, with the New York Jets is injury. Every time he feels like he's getting hot and he's showing flashes, he goes down with an injury. So if Bryce Huff can stay healthy, I don't see why he does not have a really productive season with the New York Jets. I feel like he's one of those guys that's a fan favorite as well, that a lot of Jets fans are excited about what he brings to the table. So I feel like he's going to make the roster. He's going to have an impact on the edge. And I feel like he could potentially be the sleeper of this defensive line heading into the season. Now, the biggest question is, who's going to be the X factor? Who's that player on the defensive line that has to have a big season in order for this entire defensive line to really click? So who's that guy for you, Jack?
I'm going with Carl Lawson, man. I definitely want him to, show us that he's worth the contract we gave him, last offseason. Obviously, it was unprecedented and horrible that he, wasn't able to play a single snap last year, especially after his electric training camp. So, hopefully he can come back this year and really, be our most productive defensive lineman, be a constant pest to opposing quarterbacks. And I think that, if he's playing at his highest possible level, it'll make everybody else on that defensive line play at their highest possible level as well. So definitely excited to see, what kind of player Carl Lawson is, man. Obviously, we know his track record on the Bengals, but we don't know what type of player he's going to be as a New York Jet yet. So very excited to see him finally out there healthy. Fingers crossed, man. We need you, Carl.
Yeah, we do need you, Carl. We need a bona fide edge rusher, please. I think Lawson is the obvious answer for the X Factor, because if he has a big-time season, that's only going to help out guys in the inside and help out the overall defensive line. The player that I have for the X Factor is going to be John Franklin Myers. I feel like John Franklin Myers is such an underrated, underappreciated piece to this defense, because last year he started off the season great. He had a phenomenal game in week number 1, had really good numbers, and then he got that extension, and then he had a really good game against the Houston Texans where he had that interception. He had a 2-sack game, and some people were like, oh, we gave John Franklin Myers way too much money. Why did we extend him? And I could not disagree more with those takes. John Franklin Myers is such an important piece of this defensive line, because he's honestly the only one that can line up on the edge and line up on the inside. He's so versatile. He can do both of those things, and you need to have versatility on this defensive line. And whenever his name is called upon, he wins his matchups one-on-one. He did have 6 sacks last year, which doesn't jump off the screen at you. But if you watch the film and you watch the reps that John Franklin Myers had, he was winning his one-on-ones pretty much 8 out of 10 times, it seemed like. Just because he wins his one-on-one doesn't mean he gets a sack. So I feel like with John Franklin Myers having another year under the system of Robert Saleh, he's really going to break out. And I think he's going to have like 8+ sacks this year if he stays healthy, because he's one of those players that Jets fans need to realize is a big-time piece of this defensive line. And I'm so happy John Franklin Myers got that extension, because if we did not give him that extension and he entered free agency and we lost John Franklin Myers, or we had to pay him even more, then his defensive line on paper would not look as good. So I feel like JFM is that X factor for me. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Who's going to have the most sacks this season in 2022 on this defensive line? Jack, who's your pick?
This is a tough one, man, because a little disclaimer here, a little preamble. I think it's going to be close. I don't think we're going to be that team that has, a standout, player that has, 17, 18 sacks, and then, the rest of the guys have single digits. I think it's going to be very close. I think all these guys are going to be putting in the work, and I think it is going to be close. But I'm going to give it to Quinnen Williams. I love what Carl Lawson is going to bring. I love what Jermaine Johnson is going to bring from both edges. And I think they're both going to be pests. I think they're going to force the quarterback to step up into a collapsing pocket. And then there's going to be Quinnen Williams right there to eat him up and make the play. I'm giving Quinnen Williams double-digit sacks at 10. I know it's not a lot compared to, what TJ Watt did last year. But, I think that, like I said, everybody's going to be putting in a sort of even amount of work. But I'll give it to Quinnen Williams as a dominant interior pass rusher, what we've needed him to be since we drafted him. And I think he's finally going to explode this year.
If Quinnen gets 10 sacks and leads the team, I'm absolutely all on board with that. The Jets have not had a double-digit sack player in I don't even know how long. It's been way too long. The guy that I'm going to predict to have the most sacks on the team is Carl Lawson. If he plays all 17 games, I think Carl Lawson is going to rack up 11 sacks in total. And I feel like if this does happen, this defense is really going to take off. Because another thing about this defensive line that you have to realize is, like Jack said, there's not going to be one guy, in my opinion, that's going to take off and get all the sacks. I feel like it's going to be spread around where, Lawson gets 11, Quinnen gets 10, John Franklin Myers gets 8, Jermaine Johnson gets 5, Clemens gets 3. You know what I'm trying to say? And Sheldon Rankins gets 3. It's kind of spread around. So I feel like that's what I'm expecting from this defensive line. And my pick is definitely going to be Carl Lawson. So when it comes to the total sack numbers on the defensive line this year, that's a big question. The Jets as a team had 26 sacks last year. That also includes sacks from Michael Carter II. He sacked Tom Brady, sacks from a couple linebackers and a couple defensive backs. But as a team, they had 26 total sacks last year. So Jack, how much sacks do you think they can get as a team this year, including the linebackers and D-backs?
I would put it somewhere around 40. 26 overall sacks last year. You compare it to a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had the most in the league. They had a whopping 55 team sacks last year. So, I'm not expecting that, but I would definitely like a significant jump up from where we were last year. I mean, overall, we were the 32nd ranked defense in the league, so I expect a jump up in pretty much all defensive categories. But I think if we can, get another 15 team sacks this year compared to last year, we'll be in a good spot moving forward.
Yeah, I think the 40 mark is really important. If we can hit 40 plus sacks, that's going to bring us as like a top 10, top 12 pass rushing defense. And
which we should be with the talent we have.
Exactly. And that brings me to the next point of this entire video, which is the most important part of the entire defensive line, is the defensive line and the pass rush is the most important piece of this entire defense for this whole thing to work. So if the Jets don't have 40 sacks around there, then, or maybe 35 plus if we're being, realistic, then this defense is not going to really thrive. Because yes, we bolstered up the secondary with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Jordan Whitehead. The secondary does look good, especially with LaMarcus Joyner coming back from injury. But the defensive line is going to be the X factor of this entire defense. So what's your thoughts of the defensive line determining the success of the entire defense?
Yeah, man, we touched about it very briefly at the beginning of this video, but, that's the Robert Saleh scheme. He's coming from great defenses in his past, a phenomenal defensive front at his last spot in San Francisco as the DC over there. It's clearly the most important part of the Robert Saleh defense. It's getting to the passer, disrupting the pass, and, making life a little bit easier on your secondary. Getting in some friendly down and distance situations for your defense. Where you can afford to keep sending heat, and you don't have to be playing on your toes the whole game. I feel like this is a defense that should be designating the tempo of the game. This is a defense that should be making it extremely difficult for offenses to move the ball, and hopefully we're going to be seeing a lot of 3 and outs this year, man.
Yeah, and I think last year that Tennessee Titans victory, we think of Zach Wilson is the big reason why we won that game, which is a big reason. But you cannot forget the Jets had 7 sacks last year. In that game against the Titans. And that was a big reason why we won that game. We dominated the line of scrimmage. We contained Derrick Henry, and we got to Ryan Tannehill 7 total times. So that shows you the flash of this defense. And I feel like that's a little glimpse of what this defense can do if it all clicks on all cylinders. And to quote Joe Douglas, I don't know exactly what he said word for word, but this offseason he said, the way you take out a $30 million per year wide receiver is by elite pass rush. It's not by a corner. It's by getting to the quarterback and making sure the quarterback is not in rhythm and doesn't have the opportunities to give the ball to the wide receiver. So that shows you how important the pass rush is for the system. And I'm really excited to see it all hopefully click in this year number 2 at Robert Saleh. Now getting into the long-term outlook for this defensive line. We got Jermaine Johnson just drafted, so he's here for the next 5 years. Assuming we pick up his 5th-year option, which we probably will. Quinnen Williams, we picked up his 5th-year option, so he's on contract for 2 years, and he's probably going to be looking at a long-term deal unless the Jets want to franchise tag him after the 2 years. JFN, we gave him a long-term extension. Vinny Curry's on a 1-year deal, so there are some young talent on this team that we can develop for the future, like Michael Clemens, like Jonathan Marshall. There are some veterans on this team, on this defensive line rather, that's kind of like temporarily here, like Sheldon Rankin, Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard's on a walk year. Jacob Martin, we signed him to a 3-year deal. So there are, I feel like it's a perfect balance of win-now pieces, veterans connected with young talent as well. So what's your overall thoughts quickly of the long-term outlook of this defensive line?
Yeah, man, I'm really comfortable with where we're at right now. I think the core pieces that we really want moving forward are, here for at least 1 or 2 more years. It doesn't worry me that guys like Rankin, Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard will most likely be gone this year because I really like, Quinnen, JFM, Carl Lawson, Jermaine Johnson. I'll throw Bryce Huff, Michael Clemens' name in there, Jonathan Marshall. These are the guys that will be around, at least for the near future. So I'm excited to see what they can do, man.
And me and Jack both thought of a player that we think is most likely to emerge as a star. We talked about him a lot on this video already, and that's Quinnen Williams. I really feel like people need to realize that Quinnen maybe has not lived up to his, 3rd overall pick hype, but he's a top 5 defensive tackle in the league statistically. And that's not just me saying that. Like his numbers don't lie. His production doesn't lie. I know when we drafted him, we all want him to be the next Aaron Donald and be like the best in the league. And hey, he could become that. And the cool thing about that is Quinnen Williams is aware that he's not lived up to his potential, but it's not like he's been a bust. Like for the people that say Quinnen has been a bust and he's been terrible is just completely lying. Yeah. Like he is a really productive top 5. And when I say top 5, he's 5th in terms of interior defensive linemen. And I'm really excited to see what Quinnen can do emerging as a star. But to the next topic, which is a really big thing that we need to focus on this year, is the biggest concern of this defensive line. It's definitely going to be stopping the run. So Jack, what's your thoughts of the Jets stopping the run this year? Because we did miss out on Foley Fatukasi. He's walking in free agency. We really struggled against the run last year, and Foley was that core piece to stop the run. So what are your thoughts about stopping the run this year?
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting how this Jets defense has transitioned, or at least how Robert Saleh is trying to transition this Jets defense. I mean, because since the days of John Abraham, we've really lacked a true dominant edge presence, but we've been known to, you can't really run the ball on the New York Jets. Now the script is kind of flipping a little bit, or at least Robert Saleh is attempting to flip it, like I just said, because Robert Saleh is all about his pass rush. So definitely when it comes to stopping the run, I think we're going to be weaker than we have been in years prior. But I'll bring up Jonathan Marshall like I did in the beginning of the year. Maybe you guys think I'm crazy for talking about this guy this much. I know he's going to be a rotational piece. I know he's not going to make, an extreme impact like we know Quinnen and JFM will. But I think for pure run stuffing downs, we're going to see his number get called a lot. And I think he's going to be doing his job, man. It's going to maybe take, 1 or 2 more years until he's, as productive as a guy like Foley Fatukasi was for us. But I really do have faith in Jonathan Marshall. Any Joe Douglas draft pick, I will get behind. I want to see succeed. So I'm excited to see his number get called, and he's going to plug up some A gaps for sure. Yeah, and also another big factor of stopping the run is going to be the linebacker position as well, even the defensive back. So it's going to be a collective effort in terms of stopping the run. But that's definitely a big concern for the overall defense because last year we struggled. So let's see what happens coming into the season. And then finish off the video. How is the depth of the defensive line in case of injury? Like, unfortunately, what if one of the top guys goes down? What do the guys on the bottom of the depth chart look like? Like guys like Jabari Zuniga. He's probably, in my opinion, going to not make the 53-man roster and be on the practice squad. But if he has to be elevated, I feel like he could be potentially a good player. Nathan Shepard, Tanzel Smart. Guys like that, I feel like we're really deep. Like, this is probably one of the most deepest positions on the entire team, and deep in a way where it's veterans that's ready to play, right? The cornerback position is different because they're deep, but they're also extremely young. So what's your thoughts, Jack, of the depth of this defensive line in case of injury? Well, I think you just made a beautiful point there, man. It's, you can compare it to the cornerback position, but they're also very different. We do have depth in the cornerback position, but very inexperienced, young depth. Whereas you look at our defensive line depth, and you got like guys like Nathan Shepard, who's been in the league for a couple years now. You got Solomon Thomas, Sheldon Rankins, Jabari Zuniga has been with the Jets for a few years now, so he knows, what goes on here. He knows the system. He's been with Saleh. I do feel confident. Hopefully, obviously, we don't want to see these guys in a prominent role, as we've said so many times throughout this video. Rotation. These guys will get their number called, but obviously we want to see Quinnen, we want to see JFM, we want to see Carl Lawson, we want to see Jermaine Johnson. We want to see those guys out there doing their thing healthy. But if these guys do get their number called, I do feel confident. Yeah, man. And one more thing I want to say, Jermaine Johnson, I'm so happy you are a New York Jet. He's a player that's really good against the run, and he's really good against the pass. Such a huge addition to this defensive line that not only for this season, but for the long-term outlook of this New York Jets team, we needed to get Robert Saleh a piece that he can develop for the long term. And Jermaine Johnson is going to become a fan favorite. He's going to be a star on this team. I really do believe that. And like I said, he's a guy that can also help the run game and get to the quarterback. I'm expecting big things from him as a rookie. So that's going to wrap up the Jets position breakdown of the defensive line here in Jets Media. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys stayed to the end, comment down below a Jet emoji, because I know it's a longer video of Jack and myself breaking down the defensive line. Stay tuned for more Jets content, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Let's go Jets. Peace. Let's go Jets, baby.